We're here today with Karl Ackerman of Wild Ones to explore his native plant butterfly garden, which really is habitat for all kinds of marvelous wildlife. So we're here in Munster, Indiana, on a typical block that becomes incredible when suddenly there is an explosion of native plants, habitat, and all kinds of nature connections.
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. I'm really honored and humbled, but and to be part of this project, to rolling out the Pollinator Guide. It's been a lot of fun, and it's a little bit of work.
It's very exciting.
We're going to start in the front, and you can see some things are blooming now. This is a native Coreopsis. Yesterday I did see a monarch nectaring on it, and you can also see the milkweed that's amongst it. There's also, quite a bit of black-eyed Susan, brown-eyed Susan that's, yet to bloom. Here we can see a lupine that's doing really well here.
Yeah.
That's a couple years old, and we do have some native yarrow. One of the themes that I go for is diversity, and also just kind of letting things show up where they show up, and not trying to fight it, but just go with it. We do have hyssop, some hystrix, a grass, the bottle brush grass. Some Queen of the Prairie is mixed in here, some rattlesnake master. But yeah, there's some obedient plants in here. Of course, the coneflowers are just starting to bloom now.
Yeah.
Of course, it adds a nice fun color texture. Of course, there's little bits between driveways. So what do you do with it? You could, just plant lawn here. I started planting sunflowers here, and then the sunflowers just started to reseed themselves. Of course, sunflowers, they're very charismatic, and the pollinators, really love them. So this gets to be a real pollinator hotbed, around, 4th of July or so, between the Monarda and the Liatris and the sunflowers.
Yeah. And all the milkweed.
Yeah.
And now we're headed to the back of this natural oasis.
So you immediately, here's a button bush. So this is more of a wet area. I learned that it was a wet area. Of course, I didn't know it when I started planting things here. And so that's just one of the things I learned. So start planting things for wet. Queen of the Prairie, likes the wet. The primrose, native primrose. There's some sweetgrass down here. And goat's beard, some white turtlehead. You pan along the fence here. This used to be all lawn, but over several years I wanted to create more of a thicket, for habitat, for cover. And of course, the birds like it, but also the pollinators, they need cover as well. I used to think I was here and my garden was there. But now, wherever I go, I'm just amongst my garden. I'm part of the garden. So it's just a really amazing feeling that I share the garden, with all the critters, with the pollinators. It's a shared experience. I'm not here in the gardens over there. It's amongst us. But some native larkspur. We do have some goldenrod. There's some ironweed here. This was one of the first gardens that I planted. I did understand that I'd open the book, in the flower book, and I would see that the butterflies like this, bees like this, and this was my first guide before I learned about habitat, before I learned about native plants. And then of course that was kind of a stepping stone. Once I learned about the relationship between native plants and pollinators, that was one big giant leap. Then the next leap, I would say, for me was then to learn what habitat was. Mm-hmm. And the habitat, of course, is food, water, shelter, and a place to rear their young. Some of my carnivorous plants. So a little story, of course I have 3 daughters, and my middle daughter, I think she was in 3rd or 4th grade. We're learning about Indiana and the geography and things. And I'm reading her book to her, and I see that the Indiana Dunes is home to some carnivorous plants. I thought, holy cow, I gotta get some of those. Of course, amongst it now we do have our prickly pear, and that's real popular at the dunes as well. These are Canada lilies. I really inspired by them. They're about 15 years old now, but after it took about 4 or 5 years for them to bloom. We do have a Virginia creeper up here and a grapevine. Yeah, you can see the mayaples. We've got some wild ginger under there. This is a Virginia snake root.
Let's head over and check out this patch of Monarda.
Yeah, we can see it's starting to bloom here.
That's the first Monarda
Yep.
petal I've seen this year.
It's starting to bloom.
It will be an absolute magnet for the bees.
Yeah, the bees love it. Yeah. Hence the name bee balm.
Bee balm. And you mentioned, Karl, that there's a berm habitat.
Yes, I did learn about habitat to provide cover. And when I was working with the National Wildlife Federation, they recommended a wood pile. But now, I repurpose all the branches I cut, all the yard waste. I don't necessarily create waste anymore. I repurpose it to create this texture here for the critters to live in. So yeah, it's a berm, it's a wood pile, it's habitat. Jack in the pulpit, you can see the fruits, starting to mature back in here. This is the Salix discolor. Yeah, the Salix discolor, the pussy willow. Again, one of the first things to bloom. It's the dogwood, flowered, now it's bearing fruit. Of course, the pollinators enjoyed it, and now the birds are going to enjoy the seeds toward the end of the year.
And in here we have a surprise.
Yeah, so this is a non-native, but it's a little cherry tree. And again, it's fun, to see these fruits. This is the Stella cherry.
Yeah.
And then I do have Fuji Nagala apple tree.
Oh, and here is this is a side hobby.
Yeah, my side hobby. I love to propagate plants. We'll either give these away as projects, through the Wild Ones, with our planting projects, or we may end up, selling them, next year in our fundraiser.
Ooh, and now we're arriving at the penstemon.
Penstemon, yeah.
Oh, and it's still in full bloom. Ooh, we've got a bumbler.
There he
We've
goes.
got a bumbler.
Oh, there's a couple of them over there, yeah. Thrilling moments.
Yeah. Oh, is that indigo? Those are indigo pods already formed too.
Oh yeah. Baptisia australis. Yeah, they just finished blooming. And then there's some more that's in bloom over there.
Oh, there was this fern.
Yeah,
Karl?
so that's Camptonia peregrina. And it is a fern that does like sun, a well-drained soil. And I started out with a couple of plants here. And so this berm was created by a felled oak tree, just covered it with soil and made a berm out of it. And the Camptonia peregrina loves it up here. And the lupines, so these lupines are seeding. You can see they did well back here. That's Baptisia alba.
And we see our bumblebee foraging for pollen. And this, Karl, is another milkweed.
Yeah, it's a green milkweed. So the rabbits, do enjoy eating it. So I did put a cage around it this year. And part of my strategy is that, hey, if you only plant 10 plants and the rabbits eat 3, it's a bummer. You lose 30%. But if you plant 500 plants and you lose 30, hey, that's okay. But if there's something you really, really want to keep the rabbits from eating, I do cage it. And this is a green milkweed. Yeah. And it's, it is flowering this year, of course, you can see.
Yeah.
And I hope, the monarchs find it. So, one of the things I learned from Brenda Gijic was about asters and how they're a native host plant for the checker spot. But of course, and then they're nectar sources for butterflies toward the end of the year. But then, the bees love them. So it's like a win-win-win. There's some New England aster, some heart-shaped aster. One of the things I also learned was that asters, they will propagate and pop up in other areas, and I used to be of the mind that the kind of the scorched earth approach. If I didn't plant it there, I would just yank it out. Hey, I didn't plant it there. Let's just get rid of it. But then I learned, hey, if I don't know, let it grow. And asters are one of those things that they don't bloom toward the end of the year. But if you learn to identify them, oh, that's an aster. You let it grow, and it's going to bloom at the end of the year.
It's going to really deliver for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look at all of the asters. Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, we have some microhabitats. We got some shade in the back, some partial shade over here for the asters, and now this area is pretty much a full sun area. So there's some liatris, there's some blue baptisia that's blooming over here.
I see pollinators on that baptisia.
There's some obedient plant here, some goldenrod, before the towards the end of the year. There's some butterfly milkweed over here.
Carl, would you mind sharing with folks what's going on here with your straw bales?
Yeah, so actually this was my wife's idea, Peggy. But yeah, we're growing things in straw bales. It keeps it off the ground. I think it helps, keep it away from rabbits' reach, if you will. I do started things in straw bales. You can seed the straw bale with, I used my fish emulsion stuff to add nutrients. And then, we planted some peppers. The tomatoes do really well. Some things, of course, didn't do so well, like beans and things, but we found the tomatoes and the peppers do really well in the straw bales. These are the pussy toes. It's a host plant for the American lady butterfly.
And you see caterpillars and butterflies through here?
Yes, yeah. It's funny how we're amazing. If you plant it, they will come. And you see the American lady, purposefully land on it. And then I go over and lift up the leaf, and boom, there's some eggs.
There's some eggs.
And then, I also see the caterpillars as well.
And so I also see another host plant in here.
The violets.
The violets. They're beautiful flowers in the springtime and wonderful food for the fritillaries.
For fritillaries, yeah.
Is this ginger?
Yes, this is the native ginger.
That's our native ginger.
And I did dig up some roots this spring and washed them off, and it does taste like ginger. Hence the name. We can see the ferns. There's cinnamon fern, ostrich fern, May apples, golden ragwort that's done blooming. But yeah, if you're a toad, it's, hey, I want toads to show up in my yard. Actually, we do have toads. I do hear them once in a while.
We have a duck egg here.
Yeah, Louise and Larry, they do come every year, and they do their mating. And we have had ducks nest in our grasses here. So, and then she marches them off after 4 or 5 hours. So a water feature. Of course, this is a very elaborate water feature, but even just having a bird bath, one of the 4 essential elements, food, water, shelter, and a place to rear their young. Some of the pollinators, need water, of course, for their metabolism, but they also need water to, build their nests. It's not just entertainment, but it's like, again, sharing our backyard with the ducks and the birds and, of course, the pollinators.
What an incredible adventure your garden is. It's not just a place for 1 or 2 flowers, it's a place for habitat.
And I guess in closing, it is an adventure, and it's a process. Start small. We've been here almost 20 years, and I started planting 20 years ago, and it takes years, believe me. Of course, I planted things early on when I saw in a book that a hummingbird or a bee would like this plant. But then I discovered what native plants are and the association of our insects with native plants. And then I learned about what habitat was. And it just expanded my mind, and the garden. But now I feel like I'm among the habitat. The bees and the butterflies are among the habitat, and we share it. So I'm part of the habitat, they're part of the habitat, and we share these plants, and it's just so exciting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your incredible garden with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
And for lending your expertise for the creation of our new Pollinator Habitat Landscaping Guide.
Yeah, it's an honor. It's humbling.
It's mutual. Thank you, Karl.
Thank you.